You're listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network.
Miami's got the Dolphins, the greatest football team. We take the ball from goal to goal like no one's ever seen. We're in the air, we're on the ground, we're always in control. Hey, when you say Miami, you're talking Super Bowl. 'Cause we're the Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one. Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one.
Hello, Miami Dolphin fans, and welcome to the Same Old Dolphin Show, part of the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network. I'm Josh Katzker. With me today and every day is my brother from the exact same mother, Aaron the Brain. Aaron, say hello to the people.
Hello to the people.
Brain, I'm going to swear. So anybody who's listening to the show, if you've got kids within earshot, I want to give you a fair warning that I'm about to swear. Okay?
You didn't do
ready?
this before the Jets podcast.
No, well, that's kind of its own thing. I mean, you got to go into the Jets podcast knowing that we're going to swear, but I'm going to swear now, okay?
Okay.
Folks, fuck the Bengals. Fuck the Bengals. Fuck that asshole on the Bengals, Sean Williams, stepping in on Solomon Kinley's leg, just stomping on his ankle. Fuck Mike Thomas with 2 illegal hits on Jakeem Grant. What a disgusting organization. Fuck Zach Taylor. Just everybody on that team. AJ Green, you're cool. Everybody else, I'm all set with. Just absolute garbage, the way that they acted in this game. And listen, I couldn't be happier than that the Miami Dolphins defeated the Cincinnati Bengals 19-7 to improve to 8-4 on the season and to come into this home stretch of the 2020 season with the playoffs in sight. And with the disgusting Cincinnati Bengals behind us. Just what a gross team the Cincinnati Bengals are. Just a lot of dirty nonsense out there from the Bengals, Brain.
Yeah, the nasty natty. I mean, look, it's one thing to have, to play with an edge. And it's another thing to play dirty. And, I'm all for teams that can manage to kind of find that line and straddle that line perfectly. But, in order to do that, you've got to have a coach that really takes control of things, that wants to take control of things, that wants to make sure that things don't get out of hand and makes an emphasis of it. And clearly that's not happening in the culture there in Cincinnati. And you have a very undisciplined team, and you have a bunch of guys that are just doing whatever the hell they want. And, I thought as bad as like all of those individual acts were, to me, what I thought was most disgusting was after the second Mike Thomas hit, which started which led to the Dolphins sideline pouring out onto the field, Brian Flores going after the sideline, and we're going to get into that a little bit. When we're talking about the good, bad, and the ugly, and the ramifications or potential ramifications of all of that. But what I thought was particularly disgusting was after all of that, and 2 really horrendous penalties by Mike Thomas, you see him on the sideline just yucking it up. Like it was no big deal. And he's just happy that he got to deliver, a big hit to Jakeem Grant. Thankfully, Jakeem Grant, it looks like he just got like the wind knocked out of him. He got up. He was fine. He actually returned the next punt. Well, called a fair catch. Thank God. But Thankfully Jakeem was healthy and we were able to kind of move on, but I thought that was really disgusting. And then the guy goes in and he's on Twitter and he's tweeting about it and he's joking about it. After he does that and he's laughing on the sideline and you see that, and then Cincinnati has to punt again after that huge long delay. I mean, you can't tell me that if this was the Dolphins and the Dolphins had a player who did that twice on consecutive punts, that guy wouldn't be sitting on the bench. Especially after the brawl and everything that just took place. Like, the fact that he was out there and just had no discipline to him. Zach Taylor did nothing. Special teams coach did nothing. None of them pulled him aside, said anything to him. It was almost like he got an attaboy for it.
It's total nonsense.
It was horrific. And you're right. Like, fuck the Bengals.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Fuck the Bengals. And you know what else? While we're at it, fuck the Steelers too. Because guess what? As we're recording right now on Monday evening, the Pittsburgh Steelers have been defeated by the Washington football team. So the 1972 perfect season Miami Dolphins remained the only team in the history of the National Football League to have a perfect season. Pop the champagne, boys. Pop the champagne, class of 72. L'chaim.
It's not champagne, but I'll drink to that.
Yeah, I'm having water. It's helpful for my vocal cords to have water. But
likewise,
at any rate, Miami Dolphins get the 19-7 victory over the Cincinnati Bengals, and with 4 games to go, find themselves right in the middle of the playoff hunt. They've gotten almost got a little bit of help from the Jets, who jetsed in the most Jetsy way this weekend. The Jets almost defeated the Las Vegas Raiders, but just they're the Jets, so Greg Williams calls an all-out cover zero blitz, and they get beat on the last play of the game. But that's, whatever. That's Adam Gase and Greg Williams' problem. That's not our problem anymore. But so while that might have been helpful to us, the Dolphins took care of their business, which is all that we can ask for as Miami Dolphins fans. Yeah, it's great to get a little bit of help from elsewhere, but what you want at the end of the day is for your team to take care of their business, and that's exactly what the Dolphins did. So we're going to get into the good, the bad, and the ugly from this one, as we always do. But first, a reminder to make sure that you are following us on social media, facebook.com/Same Old Dolphins. Give us a like over there. Follow us on Twitter at Amplified to Rock, at Aaron the Brain. That's at Aaron the Brain, at Same Old Dolphins. And make sure you go to Apple Podcasts, where you can download, rate, review, and subscribe to the Same Old Dolphins Show. We appreciate all of you that have taken the time to do that. And every episode of the Same Old Dolphins Show is available at dolphinstalk.com, your one-stop shop for all things Miami Dolphins and the home for all the latest Miami Dolphins news and information. Make sure you're visiting dolphinstalk.com each and every day. All right, Brandon, let's get into this game between the Miami Dolphins and the Cincinnati Bengals. I think overall, again, this was the Miami Dolphins coming in and going to work and doing what they needed to do to get the win. Let's dive in on the good, and there's quite a bit of it. And I think the only place, really, the only logical place to start when you want to talk about the good from this game is this unbelievable Miami Dolphins defense. If it's not for one play where Byron Jones takes the wrong angle and Brandon Jones makes a little bit of a mistake and turns into a 72-yard touchdown for Tyler Boyd, if it's not for that, the rest of the game was almost complete lockdown from this defense, Brain.
Yeah, I mean, it was, the Bengals also had a really nice drive at the end of the first half where I felt the Dolphins were really fortunate that the Bengals missed a field goal. It could have very easily been a 10-6 game going into the half. But this was a bad half of football from the Miami Dolphins on both sides of the ball, offensively and defensively. And in the second half, they looked like a different team. They looked like a team that got chewed out and woke up at halftime with just a brand new sense of urgency and completely dominated this football game. The offense set the tone, but the defense was dominant throughout. In fact, the Cincinnati Bengals ran 22 plays on offense in the second half for a total of 30 yards. And prior to their final drive of the game, which ended in an interception, prior to that drive, they had run 16 plays for -2 yards on 4 drives.
You love to see it.
16 plays for -2 yards. And that last drive where they gained 32 yards, 22 of them came on a short pass that was, turned into a 22-yard gain. And it was one bad play. It was one little hiccup and an otherwise completely dominant performance by this Dolphins defense in the second half. And what makes it even more impressive is that they played the entire second half without Xavier Howard. Arguably the defensive player of the year, certainly the best player on this Dolphins defense thus far this season. They also played the entire second half without a Landon Roberts, the team's best run-stopping linebacker. So they were shorthanded, and significantly so, and they were still utterly dominant. And it seemed like after... I mean, look, the defense came out and they were dominant pretty much from the get-go. But after that brawl, well, I mean, it wasn't a brawl, but after the sidelines cleared, after the little scuffle, we'll call it, I really felt like the Dolphins defense ratcheted up the intensity to a whole other level, to where it felt like every single time that Corey Allen dropped back to throw a pass, he had less than 2 seconds before he had a Dolphins defensive lineman or a Dolphins linebacker laying on top of him. It was just, that was outstanding defense. That was elite level defense. You got to take into account the opponent, but that's the kind of defense that the Dolphins are going to need to play if they want to make a playoff run.
Absolutely. Carlton Allen had no time at all to throw the ball in this game. And for those of you who didn't listen to the preview show, this is the shtick that we're running with, is that Brandon Allen is a absolute generic NFL quarterback to the point that we couldn't even remember his name. So we just keep changing his name. So yeah, it's safe to say that Douglas Allen had a very rough go of it, and the Dolphins were breathing down his neck all day long. And that's a really good thing, because they're going to need to keep a lot of that momentum going as we go into these last 4 games when the opposition gets much tougher. Of course, the defense wasn't the only good in this game. We got to talk about the coming out party for Mike Gesicki in this game. Gesicki had himself a little field day, and it's not just Gesicki having a great day with 9 receptions, 88 yards, and a touchdown, targeted 11 times. But I think that's the other thing that you got to really stress, is that he was targeted 11 times by Tua Tagovailoa, who finally seemed to recognize that this is a guy that can go up and get the ball, and he can win those 50-50 balls. And the two of them really established a nice connection in this game that hopefully bodes well for the Dolphins coming into these final 4 games of the season.
Absolutely. And one more good, this was not like by any stretch an outstanding game by Tua, but the Dolphins found something in the second half of this game with the no huddle offense going up tempo, and Tua got into a rhythm, And for the first time since that Arizona game, you could see the wow plays. You saw the vintage Tua making a guy miss in the backfield, keeping his eyes downfield, delivering a strike, rolling out to his left, scrambling, getting the defense, in that uncertain no man's land where they're not sure whether to defend the run or defend the pass, and keeping his eyes downfield and on the move, delivering a 35-yard pass on the money. Those are the traits. Those are the plays that made Tua an elite NFL prospect. And we saw those plays on display in the second half when he started to get into a rhythm, get some confidence. You can see that Tua is a really instinctive player. When he is playing on his instincts, the greatness just shines. It just, you take the reins off and you let the sports car just go. You just let him fly. Let him do his thing. You might make a mistake every now and then, but the wow plays are there to be made. You can see that when they're trying to be careful with him and they're trying to keep him in the pocket and he's thinking too much, or he's just doing the quick little passes, where it's very simple like that. He looks handcuffs, and then when his first read isn't there, he starts thinking, and you could just see it. He's hesitant, and he's not the same quarterback. But when you break the reins and just let him go and let Tua cook, I mean, you get some wow plays, and that's the kind of stuff that makes me really excited for the future of this team and the future of Tua Tagovailoa, because he looked just like the guy that we saw at Alabama for stretches of this game in the second half. Not so much in the first half, but when they really, let him cook, Tua looked like the truth.
Yeah, he really did. And he ends up 26 of 39 for 296 and a touchdown. Still no interceptions. And for all of the talk that we've heard all season long about how Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert are your two rookie quarterbacks who are the ones that are looking really good, and they're like the class of this year's QB class. Well, I don't know if you saw any of that Chargers-Patriots game, but the Patriots made Justin Herbert look absolutely horrible as they romped over the Chargers 45-0. And, Joe Burrow's hurt, and, and I don't want to say anything about that because that, obviously, having an offensive line probably would have been helpful for Joe Burrow. But at the end of the day, right now, Tua Tagovailoa is the rookie quarterback with the highest quarterback rating in the National Football League. He has thrown 8 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. And you can say all you want about, this guy dropped the pass and it should have been caught and it should have been picked off and it should have blah, 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 blah. At the end of the day, none of those interceptions came to be interceptions because they were dropped. Right. You could also say he should have had a 91-yard touchdown pass in this game to Jakeem Grant, who we're going to talk about in a second. But Jakeem Grant couldn't make the play. Jakeem Grant holds on to that bomb from Tua that was right there in his hands. And Tua's numbers look completely different in this game. So, at the end of the day, it is what it is. But And I'm not saying that Tua hasn't had moments where he has been questionable or hasn't looked great, because he's had plenty of those moments. But the fact is that overall, if you're looking at the entire body of work, I think that the overall picture is one that should encourage you as a Dolphin fan. Are you seeing signs that he is the best quarterback in the league right now? No, of course not. But you're seeing those glimpses of what his ceiling is. And as things go on with him, I think there's going to be an opportunity for him to really shine. And I think you've got to be confident as a Miami Dolphin fan, given the performances that he's put in. And I'm glad they got him cooking again in this game against Cincinnati, because, Kansas City's coming to town next week, and it's going to be a much stiffer challenge for Tua and the gang. But we'll get to that. We'll get to Kansas City when it's time to get to Kansas City. First, let's keep talking about something else that was a good in this game. How are we going to not talk? And we talked about the defense, but we didn't talk about Xavier Howard coming down with his 8th interception of the season. This is, I mean, by far the best cornerback in the National Football League. Opposing quarterbacks have something like a 45% completion percentage when they're targeting Xavier Howard. He has just been absolutely fantastic. 8 interceptions on the season. He's definitely going to be an all-pro, definitely going to be a Pro Bowler, and I think he's got to be very much in the conversation with Aaron Donald as your defensive player of the year. I mean, this guy is really, really getting it done. And in a league like this, in the National Football League, where people are really concerned about the flashy kinds of stats, 8 interceptions is a pretty flashy stat, Bran.
Yeah, and it's not just the interceptions. I mean, the interceptions are incredible, and the fact that he's getting an interception, 8 interceptions in 12 games is ridiculous, and he's got something like 20 interceptions in his last 34 games, which is just unheard of.
That's insane. That is insane production from a cornerback.
It is, but it's not just that, because it's not like he's, been one of those corners that will get a big play, but also give up a big play, because he hasn't been giving up the big plays. He's been basically locking things down. And then he's also not one of these corners that is afraid to tackle, because he'll go up there and he'll tackle, he'll help out in run defense. He's been all over the field. It was a few weeks ago. I think you had to go back to the Arizona game, but I remember, one of the big talk in that Arizona game was a pair of Arizona decisions on 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, and they got a couple of those situations because Xavier Howard as a corner and Byron Jones at a corner were up there making stops at the line of scrimmage. And that's something that I don't think gets talked about enough with as great as this secondary has played, because the secondary has been phenomenal in pass defense, and that's been talked about by us and by several others for, basically the last 2 months now, because the Dolphins have won 7 of their last 8 games, and the catalyst for it has been the play of this secondary. But it hasn't been talked about enough, the way these guys really play complete defensive football. They're not just defending the pass. They're up there tackling, on the run. And it's not just the corners, but it's Bobby McCain, who looks I don't remember Bobby McCain missing a tackle all season long. Eric Rowe is all over the place, consistently in the box making plays. And when Brandon Jones is in there, Brandon Jones is making plays. I mean, this Dolphins secondary is incredible, and Xavier Howard is the leader of the pack.
Yeah, the Dolphins defense just all around really doing a great job. They were number 2 in the NFL in scoring defense coming into the Monday night game that Pittsburgh just finished with Washington, and Pittsburgh was less than a full point ahead of them in points per game. So the Dolphins probably are now the number 1 scoring defense, because Pittsburgh gave up 23 points to Washington tonight. So that would leave probably the Miami Dolphins as the number 1 scoring defense in the National Football League. So really, really good stuff from the Dolphins.
The Dolphins have given up 212 points. At this point in the season, every team has now had a bye week. This was the last week for bye week.
Right.
So every team has played 12 games. The Dolphins have given up 212 points. The Steelers have given up 211 points.
Oh, man. So, they're right there, neck and neck. Yeah. So
the Ravens have given up 214. So those 3, and then the next closest team is at 241 points allowed, the New Orleans Saints. So there's 2 points a game basically difference between those 3 teams and then the next closest team. So those 3 teams are your elite scoring defenses right now in the National Football League. The Dolphins, the Steelers, and the Ravens. I did not think, as optimistic as I was, and look, the season's not over yet, and we're going to get into the brutal stretch that the Dolphins have left, which starts with the most dangerous one, the highest scoring team, or one of them in the league, in the Kansas City Chiefs next week. But I did not think that coming into the last 4 games of the season, I would be speaking about the Dolphins defense in the same breath as the Pittsburgh Steelers defense and the Baltimore Ravens defense.
It's a pretty remarkable turn of events. And it speaks to how great of a job Josh Boyer and Brian Flores are doing with this team on the defensive side of the ball. You cannot say enough good things about the work that they are doing with this team. It's really, really fantastic. Let's move off of the good stuff. Oh, wait, we can't move off of the good stuff. There's more good stuff. The GOAT, Jason Sanders, 4 for 4. Including a 48-yarder. The other 3 we can get into here, and I think provides us a nice transition into the bad, because the other 3 field goals were much, much shorter, and it speaks to the kind of very conservative play calling we were seeing from Chan Gailey, particularly when the Dolphins were deep in the red zone. And I think the one real example was that goal-to-go situation where they just ran the ball 3 times and then gave up and tried to kick the field goal and didn't ever try to take a shot some other way into the end zone with Gaskin. I don't want to be all over Chan Gailey. I am not one of those people that thinks he's doing a terrible job with this team. I think you've got to consider the fact that Tua is a rookie who could only absorb so much of the playbook in a sort of protracted preseason and off-season program that didn't go the way that it normally would have gone. Plus, he's been hurt, and he's also doesn't have a whole lot of playmakers around him. So I don't want to say that Chan Gailey is purposely sort of holding Tua back. I think there's only so much that Tua can do and be comfortable with, but and I think largely a lot of the concepts that they're running offensively are pretty good, and we really saw them find something, particularly in the second half of this game. However, when the Dolphins find themselves in these red zone situations, it seems more often than not, things are getting bottled up and getting very conservative, and playing for the field goals like that it's got a very sort of Tony Sperano feel to it. And I think that is something that could prove to be problematic if you're getting 3 points when you're inside the opponent's 5-yard line instead of 6 or 7 points, especially when you start to go up against high potent offenses like the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah. And I think the sequence that you're talking about was actually a sequence in the first half where the Dolphins got inside the 10 and then they ran a couple of plays, and then on 3rd and goal from I think like the 3-yard line, they did another run, and I didn't like that at the time. I still am not crazy about it, but I also understood it because I think they had every intention of going for it on 4th down with the fake field goal, which, by the way, that would have been an absolute special play. But we'll get into the bad. I guess here's a bad. That was a bad mental error by a couple of rookies there in Robert Hunt and Austin Jackson, because all they needed to do was report themselves as eligible, and that's that's a field. I mean, that's a fake field goal. I guess you could say maybe that, like, the idea there is that you're trying to maybe pull a fast one up by the refs, because if you report yourself as eligible, maybe you're sending an alarm off to the opposing defense.
You don't want to tip your
teams.
hand. You don't want to tip your hand.
Right. But if you don't do that, then you get yourself, an illegal formation, which is what happened. But at any rate, the that was one thing. What I didn't like in the second half, when the Dolphins took the opening drive down and scored a touchdown on a touchdown pass to Mike Gesicki, and then they're driving essentially all through the air, and then it's run, and then a fade. And then they did it again, and it's run, and then a fade. And it's just like, look, it hurts that they can't run the football. And that's probably overarching. That's probably the biggest bad right now. That's the biggest theme with this Dolphins offense right now, is that we can't run the ball when we want to run the ball, and we can't run the ball when we need to run the ball. And you need to be able to run the ball when you get down inside the 10-yard line. You have to be able to do it well. But at some point, as an offensive coordinator, as a play caller, you gotta just understand the personnel on your team, the strengths and weaknesses of your team, and understand that, like, if you can't run the ball, you can't run the ball. And if you've got Tua and he's on fire, then you gotta give him the opportunity. He's not at like Aaron Rodgers or Peyton Manning status yet, where you get inside the 10 and you need to throw the ball 3 times, but you got to give him better opportunities. And it can't just be, all right, we're throwing a fade to Devontae Parker, we're throwing a fade to Mike Gesicki. There's got to be a little bit more creativity than that. And I think that's a fair criticism of Chan Gailey in this game. And in a game where I thought Chan Gailey did a lot of good. I thought there was a lot of things to like. I thought, finding ways to pick up yardage on the ground, even though I guess they're technically not running plays. They're shovel passes with the jet sweep motion to Jakeem Grant. We saw Tua air it out a little bit. We saw them roll Tua out in the pocket. I thought there was a lot of good here. We obviously going up tempo in the second half, that worked out. I just think that for whatever reason, we get inside the 10 and maybe it's because of the opponent. Maybe it's they said, look, we're playing the Bengals. Our defense is completely dominating this game. Let's not make a mistake. I don't love that, but I can also understand that, because at the end of the day, the name of the game isn't whether you win 30-7 or whether you win 19-7. At the end of the day, it's about getting a win. And they got the win.
They sure did. They sure did get the win, which is a good thing, but it doesn't fully cover up all of these things that need to be addressed, because again, just as we were able to get a win against the Jets playing an imperfect game, we were able to get a win against the Bengals playing an imperfect game. When you go up against tougher teams that are in the playoff hunt with you, whether it's the Chiefs, whether it's the Patriots who are hanging around, the Patriots are going to be a tougher opponent than I think a lot of Dolphins fans might have thought when they saw the Patriots sitting there with a 2-5 record. And a lot of people once again decided it was safe to write the obituary for the New England Patriots, which at this point we should have learned never do that. And they're still hanging around, and that's going to be a tough game in a couple of weeks. But whether it's against the Raiders, who have a high-powered offense when it wants to be, or in Week 17 against the Buffalo Bills, the Dolphins are going to need to address these things, because they will come back to haunt them. And another thing that I think needs to be addressed is the third down efficiency. The Dolphins ended up officially 1 of 10 on third downs in this game. They were 0 for 8 at one point. Now, the one of 10 also said when they were 0 for 8 on third downs, there was a big run that Myles Gaskin busted where he put the ball on the ground, where he would have converted the third down, but instead fumbled the ball away, so it doesn't count as a third down conversion. Literally, the Dolphins finally converted on their final third down attempt of the game. But so there's really 2 things to address there. One is inability to convert on third down, and 2 is yet another running back putting the ball on the ground for the Dolphins. And I think while, yes, we know that the offensive line and their run blocking is an issue, I think another issue is the Dolphins just do not have an elite top tier running back who can hold on to the ball and make some big plays for you. Myles Gaskin is a perfectly fine average NFL running back, but there is nothing about Myles Gaskin that makes him, I think, any kind of special player in this league. Running backs are largely a dime a dozen in this league. So it really takes something special to be an above average running back. And that is not what Myles Gaskin is. And that's no offense to Myles Gaskin. He's a nice guy. He's doing a serviceable job for the Dolphins here, but we are going to be upgrading the running back position, just as I think we're going to be upgrading the wide receiver position in this upcoming offseason, because as we've seen, just the lack of skill players who can be relied upon to consistently make good plays and running backs to not put the ball on the ground is something that the Dolphins are lacking.
Yeah, and it's something that's gonna get addressed. I actually really like Myles Gaskin. I agree there he's nothing special, but I think that there's a lot to like there. I think he's a really good player. I think it's not all on the running back. I don't know that there are many running backs that could come into this offense right now and, be running for, 1,400 yards. I don't think that's really realistic. I think this offensive line is still very much a work in progress. It's still very young. I mean, they started 3 rookies on the offensive line this week, and a journeyman center. So it's not like, it's not like you got an elite offensive line. You've got a wide receiver core that is less than ideal, and you've got a rookie quarterback back there. So it's not like this offense is a finely tuned or well-oiled machine right now, where they could just kind of do whatever they want. If we had some great passing game, it would open up more lanes for the running game. If you had some great offensive line, it would be a lot easier to run. We don't have either of those things right now. And so the offense as a whole is just very much a work in progress. You've got a quarterback that's working through things to get better each week. You've got a wide receiving core that doesn't get a whole lot of separation, and you've got an offensive line that I think, as much as it's improved, and it is clearly an improved offensive line, it still has a ways to go to be an upper echelon offensive line in this league. And I think you're fooling yourself if you think that the work is done on that offensive line, because it's not. There's a lot of work to be done on that offense, and it's not just at the skill positions with wide receivers and running backs, though those positions also need an upgrade. The offensive line still absolutely needs an upgrade.
Oh, I agree. I don't know that there are very many places in this team where there isn't room for upgrades. I think the secondary is pretty close to being set, but I think you can absolutely upgrade your linebackers. I think you can still add a little bit of strength on the defensive line to be able to get to the quarterback a little bit. Obviously, that offensive line needs some help as well. And then, of course, you've got your skill positions, your wide receivers, and your running backs. I think, you know what? I feel very confident with where we are at in special teams when it comes to our place kicker and our punter. I feel good about those two positions. I feel pretty good about the quarterback right now. I'm feeling pretty confident that we're headed in the right direction with Tua. But yeah, there are still some places on this team where they need to upgrade. A couple other things you want to touch out on under bad here. Jakeem Grant did not have a good day. This was bad Jakeem. We touched on him dropping the bomb from Tua that would have completely changed the game in the first half. He made a couple of nice plays on the jet sweeps, and obviously you can't fault him for getting, crushed on some of those punt returns.
You can,
although
though.
if you call the fair catch, maybe you're not getting rocked like that. But
right.
I don't know. You wanted to talk about bad Jakeem.
Yeah, well, and it's not even just those, but he had a very dangerous play early in the game. I think it was in the first quarter on a punt return where he fielded a punt inside his 10, which that generally is a no-no. He didn't call fair catch on that, and the coverage was right there. So it was just, and Jakeem does not have, he's not, the one knock on him as a punt returner, and I'll say, week after week that he's the best punt returner in the league because of the things that he can do when he gets out in space and out in the open, and he's leading the National Football League in punt return yards and in yards per return. So he's obviously really good at it, but he can make it an adventure when it comes to catching the ball. And that's on punts as well. And so when the defense is, or when the gunners are barreling down on him and he's inside his own 10, that's not the time to try to do something spectacular, especially early in a game against the Bengals. Like, that's the time to call a fair catch the ball, and let your offense get to work. This was a bad game all around from Jakeem. And the weird thing about Jakeem is that you can't seem to just have, a game where he does a couple of good things and a couple of bad things. It's like Jakeem Grant either shows up and has a great game where he's just, every time you call his name, it's because he's doing something really well, or every time you call his name, you're just like wanting to throw something at the TV because what the hell is he doing? And this was one of those games. Yeah,
he's a maddeningly inconsistent guy who's just up and down, and it's just it'll drive you crazy with Jakeem. The other aspect that we wanted to talk about in bad, and I think it lends itself pretty nicely to the ugly from this game, is the discipline problems. There were a lot of dumb penalties, particularly in the first half. A lot of personal fouls, a lot of just not smart penalties that we saw from the Dolphins, and it was almost like a lack of composure. It was kind of hard to. It was just really unusual because this team, and it's been a hallmark of Brian Flores' Dolphins, is that they've been such a well-disciplined team on both sides of the ball when it comes to penalties. But in this game, that wasn't the case, particularly early on. And then, listen, I think the ejection of Xavier Howard and Tyler Boyd, I thought those ejections were soft. But in the National Football League, even when you're sticking up for a guy, you got to know that you can't even do anything that even resembles throwing a punch. And especially well after the fact, especially when you're on the sideline. And that's what happened with Xavier Howard. And look, I appreciate up and down what Xavier Howard was doing there, sticking up for his team. I appreciate Devontae Parker and Mac Hollins and Brian Flores and the entire team sticking up for Jakeem Grant when we took that second cheap shot in the fourth quarter of this game. You absolutely appreciate your guys going out there and standing up for their teammates. It's really important. It's really great to see that there was this kind of bond between everybody on this team. But as you're doing that, you've got to be able to keep your composure and do it in such a way that you don't sacrifice yourself for the rest of the game. So Devontae Parker and Mac Hollins get ejected. Fortunately, it sounds like they're not going to be facing suspensions. They may be facing fines, but they're not going to be suspended. I mean, luckily, this was a game where the Dolphins were pretty much had it all in control at that point. But when you put yourself in that situation and you let your emotions get the better of you, it can really put your team behind the eight ball. Luckily, like I said, it sounds like the Dolphins are going to get off scot-free. And I'm not certainly suggesting that these players should be out there playing without emotion. I love the emotion. I love the fire. That's exactly right. You got to do that. But you have to, at the same time, understand what you cannot do under any circumstances, because if you get yourself thrown out of the game, if Devontae Parker gets himself thrown out of the game because he gets heated, the Dolphins have lost one of their best offensive weapons. And so that was something that I thought was an ugly. It was an unfortunate thing. The melee was ugly. The bench clearing brawl was ugly, although the meme that is going around showing the Cincinnati Bengals and Miami Dolphins had a bench clearing brawl in the middle of the field, and then the Cincinnati Bengals offensive line is doing what it's always doing, protecting absolutely nobody, and it's just the 4 or 5 of them sitting on the bench on the sideline while everybody else is getting into it on the field. I thought that was very funny, but otherwise just kind of an ugly situation. It's ugly to have it. Listen, the hit was ugly. It was a cheap shot. And just, players losing their cool and getting ejected from the game is ugly, and it's not great. The motivation behind it, good, but letting it take you to a place where you got yourself thrown out of the game, that not so good.
Yeah, and like you said, like, we're fortunate that it looks like there's not going to be suspensions because, look, if you're Xavier Howard or Devontae Parker, you're two of the best players on this football team. Like, you getting ejected from this game, if we're not playing the Bengals, you might lose this game. And if you get suspended, well, you're going up against Kansas City next week, which is going to be extremely difficult regardless. But it would be darn near impossible without those two players. And so you've got to have some knowledge of who you are as a player and your importance to the team. If you want to throw Mac Hollins out there, and I don't want to diminish the importance of Mac Hollins on special teams as a gunner. He might be the best gunner on the football team and one of the better gunners in all of the National Football League. But if Mac Hollins wants to go out there and throw a couple of punches and get himself ejected or suspended for a game to make a point, okay. But not Devontae Parker.
I don't like that either, but
I don't like that either, but if you're gonna have somebody do it, you gotta send out a goon. You gotta have a goon to do it. Send out Michael Dieter. Send out Julian Davenport. Send out send those guys out there. Send out Calvin Munson, who had his own Kiko Alonso cheap shot, and he ended up playing, a few snaps in this game because of the absence of a Landon Roberts. But you know what I'm saying? Send out, if you're going to do that, and you're going to do it to stick up from guys, and you're going to sacrifice yourself a little bit, don't sacrifice don't sacrifice Xavier Howard and Devontae Parker. Let Igbo get into, earn his stripes a little bit as the fourth cornerback. And by the way, give a little bit of props. I know we're on the ugly and we're pretty much done covering it because this was the ugly of the game. But I'd be remiss if I didn't say, how about the performance by Noah Igbenogany in this game? Because Xavier Howard didn't play at all in the second half, and Noah Igbenogany got thrown into the fire as a boundary corner opposite Byron Jones, and I don't believe he gave up a catch. If he did, obviously the Dolphins defense in general, the second half, they gave up 30 yards. So he obviously did a good job. But Noah Igbenogany, 3 of the last 4 games coming into this one, was inactive or didn't play any snaps. He got in there and got thrown into the fire and did a good job. So, big ups to Noah Igbenogany.
Igbo showing up, and that is appreciated. Absolutely. So, Brain, any other last parting thoughts that you want to share with the people before we turn the page and move on to these final 4 games and this monumental task facing the Dolphins on Sunday?
This is where you want to be. I think even the most ardent Dolphins supporters, I think the best they could have absolutely hoped for was probably this. And I think even I think even most of them would say, I don't think we would have been 8-4. But here we are. This is what you want. And at this point, it is not enough to simply say this team getting to this point has already proven what they needed to prove and they're playing with house money. No. This team being where they're at right now at 8-4 has changed the expectation. The expectation now is to make the playoffs. Finish this thing. Because at the beginning of the season, if you looked at this and you said, well, you got to play New England there at the end of the game. You get them at home, but you got to play New England. You would say New England's a better team. You know, that's not a game you should expect to win. And you'd look at that Vegas game and you say, well, that's on the road and, you know, Las Vegas, they might be better than us or at least the same. So that might not be one that you expect to win. No, we got a better record than the Raiders. We're playing better football than the Raiders. That's a game that I expect to win. I expect to win the game at home. I mean, I'm saying as far as expectations of where they should be, Dolphins fans should absolutely not be happy. And look, grand scheme of things, at the end of the day, if they go 9-7 and miss the playoffs, you might be disappointed. But then, you know, a few weeks later down the road, when you look at the season as a whole, you could look at it and be overall happy. But right now, it's 10-6 and playoffs or bust. And that's what the expectations are. And you can't be okay if that doesn't happen. You know, a month from now, if they miss the playoffs, you could be, I mean, a month from the end of the season, if they miss the playoffs, you could look back at it and say, hey, it was a pretty good season. And obviously this team's moving in the right direction. But right now, you know, in a vacuum, just looking at this season, this team should be a playoff team. The expectation should be that they are in the playoffs come, after week 17.
Absolutely. And you talk about these last 4 games being difficult games, and the Dolphins have to go up against Kansas City. They have to go up against New England. They have to go up against Vegas. They have to go up against Buffalo. But you know what? All of those teams have to go up against the Miami Dolphins as well. And this is a Miami Dolphins team that has won 8 games, and a bunch of those games were victories over teams that a lot of us did not see the Dolphins winning at the beginning of the season, and the Dolphins went and got the job done. So there's no reason that this team shouldn't fight and shouldn't be competitive and shouldn't find a way to win 2 of these final 4 games at the very least. You go into this game against Kansas City, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, but I mean, you're playing with house money against Kansas City because nobody expects the Dolphins to win that game. You might think the Dolphins have a chance, and they do have a chance. There's absolutely a world in which the Dolphins win that game against Kansas City, 100%. But if you're asking, you know, you got all these people, you get the talking heads on TV on Thursday Night Football or Sunday, and they ask the whole panel who's going to win. And 100%, when that happens on Sunday, everybody on that panel, you're going to see the Kansas City logo over and over and over again. And that's fine, because the Dolphins can embrace the role of underdogs in that game and come out and play hard and maybe figure out a way to upset the Chiefs. We've seen and we'll get into it in our next show, there's a ground plan. There is a way to succeed in defeating the Chiefs. It's just a question of whether or not the Dolphins can do it. But why not go out and play freely? Because nobody's expecting you to win that one. So anyway, we'll get into that game in the next episode of the show. For now, a reminder to visit manscaped.com. Head over to manscaped.com. Get yourself some men's below-the-belt grooming equipment. And you can use the promo code DolphinsTalk and save 20% off your order and get free shipping. I tell you what, my father-in-law did it. My father-in-law went to manscaped.com. Why don't you go over to manscaped.com, get yourself set up, and, get yourself all neat and clean. You can get yourself the Lawnmower 3.0, get yourself the crop mop, get yourself the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, the ball toner and the ball deodorant. It's good stuff, folks. I'm telling you, we've used it personally. I have used it personally. Strongly recommend. It's a very nice scent, actually, too. Big E, Miami Dolphins Fan of the Year for 2020, Ian Berger, who you hear on Thursday mornings here on DolphinsTalk.com, he swears up and down by the smell of that stuff. So, hey, set yourself up. Visit manscaped.com and save 20% off of your order and get free shipping when you use the promo code DolphinsTalk at checkout. That's it, folks. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Same Old Dolphins Show. We'll be back later this week with a preview of the Kansas City game. But until then, take care of yourselves and each other. And we will talk to you again next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Go Dolphins!